And welcome back to the countdown. I'm your countdown host, MJ Book, back for another episode here in the world of the countdown. As I'm speaking, just getting off of a day removed from the WWE Money in the Bank pay-per-view last night. Interesting pay-per-view and an interesting post-show over on the Third Generation Wrestling. Uh, Last night, your boy was definitely in rare form. So for those of you who listen or watch Third Generation Wrestling, definitely listen to me and listen to the hosts, which is the real Big E, who you've heard on here, Eric, and the Ambassador Rob. And we were also joined by the good brother Blake, who's also been on here. So fun was had definitely by all. If you want to know what we all thought, definitely hop over to Third Generation Wrestling and listen to last night's Money in the Bank review. But this is the countdown. What we do here is, of course, we count stuff down. And I'm hopping back. It's time to head back to the 80s. 80s have been neglected a little bit, but I'm heading back. And we're going to start her off or try to get this thing finished off. Hopefully in August, I'll have this thing done, which is your boy's birthday month. Hopefully we can get this thing wrapped up. And right now, we're going to be doing 1983. This should be interesting. For those of you who kind of wondered why I did this backward instead of starting with like 1980, I started with 1989. The guy who requested this was really forcing the fact that I should start with 1989 because, of course, Batman. But also, for me, I think it's better to do it this way because there were some really big movies at the early 80s, and it kind of makes it a nice little finale. I mean, 1980 itself, as far as years, but after that, you had a couple of years where you had some really big movies come out. So that makes this a little more interesting. But instead of me talking about it, let's deal with some honorable mentions. Just a few, just to get rid of a few of these. One, I'm going to name Jaws 3. I know some people don't like Jaws 3. I liked it. I'm not saying it's better than 1. I'm not saying it's better than 2. But I damn sure am saying it's better than 4. So Louis Gossett Jr. cracked me up in this movie, so I actually liked it. And I'm a sucker for Dennis Quaid. I like Dennis Quaid. Another one is Crawl, uh, with the Glade. I like Crawl. So it's a stupid little fantasy movie. It entertained me. Sudden Impact, Clint Eastwood, Dirty Harry, Mr. Mom. Mr. Mom with Michael Keaton and Terry Garr, who back then, beautiful woman. And I'm going to say Never Again. Even though I know it's an unofficial Bond movie, even though I do rip on it, it was nice seeing Sean Connery back. The late, great Sir Sean Connery back as James Bond. So it gets the nod just because of that. Now, there's a few others, and I may say them later on, or I may say them at the end, but I'm not going to say the rest of these now because we got a countdown to get to. This is a 10-spot countdown, and we're going to start this sucker off with number 10. Number 10, some people may disagree with the idea of me having this on here. As far as the franchise, I've heard some people say this is the worst. I've heard people say, second worst. And I do understand people's feelings on this movie. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. And at the end of the day, isn't that what matters? If you personally enjoy the movie, and I personally did. So for you folks watching on YouTube, You folks on YouTube, you already know what it is. And for you folks at home, or listening, I should say, well, this movie stars the late Christopher Reeves in the iconic role of Superman. But he would be joined by comic legend Richard Pryor in Superman 3. Superman 3 started off letting you know right off the bat this was going to be different. From the very moment Richard Pryor is, he's in it. You know this is going to be different. And the first scenes of the movie start off pure comedy. Slapstick, physical comedy. And some folks have a problem with that. I didn't. I thought it was an interesting way to kind of lighten things up. I mean, after all, this is a comic book movie, folks. By the way, this was directed by Richard Lester. This was an interesting way to lighten things up, and I found it funny. And of course, this has an iconic moment of Superman gone bad, where he's drunk at a bar. He blows out the Olympic torch. He gets laid. Superman gets laid, and it ain't with Lois. It's not Lois Lane. So he bangs a slut, essentially. He bangs a slut. But it's a different movie. And Annette O'Toole would join the Superman universe playing Lana Lang. Annette O'Toole, of course, would play Clark's Earth mother, Martha Kent, on the hit TV series Smallville. So it would all come circle for her. She would go from Lana Lang to Martha Kent. So it was interesting seeing Annette O'Toole, who was beautiful then on Superman 3 and showed up beautiful in Smallville. It's like, dang, man, that's Clark's mom. And I even remember an episode where people were ragging on Clark because his mom was hot. But it's like, your mom's hot, bro. Sorry. But like I said, this is a comedy. It's a different type of Superman movie. And maybe had they not done this, Superman 4 wouldn't have been made the way it was. They thought they had a decent enough formula to do Superman 4, and this was a success. This did make money, less than the previous Superman movies, but it was still successful. And like I said, I enjoyed it. And at the end of the day, as long as a movie, you enjoy watching it, and it's done its job. I own this movie, and I'm glad I own it. It's a good movie. It makes me laugh. Some of you may disagree with me, but I liked it. And I love the idea of Superman gone bad. And of course, you have that epic brawl at the junkyard where he splits into two, and it's this battle between this evil Superman and essentially just Clark. Just Clark. So it's a great moment. It's one of my favorite moments throughout the Superman franchise is that brawl in the junkyard. It speaks a lot. And plus, it's just nice seeing the big blue Boy Scout turn just dark. And Christopher played it real well. He played an asshole really, really good. So, number 10 is Superman 3. I know some of you disagree with me, and I'm fine with that. I don't care. I like it. Number 9. Number 9 was a traumatic movie. For a while, it affected me. This is right there in the ilk of Jaws, where you were afraid to go into the water, which I was, but I can't swim. So I was also afraid that I would just plain out drown. This movie made me afraid of something a little bit more common than the water, because I'm not going to get in water. I cannot swim. But This is something, for the most part, you can't avoid. It's everywhere around you. It's everywhere around me right now. For those of you watching, you already know what it is. For those of you watching on the YouTube channel, you know this movie. For those of you listening in, this is a Stephen King classic, an absolute classic. Not It. No, this starred a dog, a very large dog, Cujo. Cujo was, I was always a little uncomfortable around dogs. This movie didn't help. let's just let's just be blunt. This movie did not help in my feelings toward dogs. In fact, it probably made it worse. But I would eventually get over this. But this was just a big old dog, big old Saint Bernard dog. They the right kind of a dog to be terrorized. And you have Dee Wallace, who I of course knew from E.T. Um, trapped in a car with her kid, who of course the kid has health issues, and they're trapped in this car in the dead of summer on a land. The car won't start, and this dog just will not let them go. And of course, this dog earlier was a sweet dog, just a big old sweetheart, and unfortunately he got bit on the nose by a rabid bat, and that was it. Dog lost his brains and started killing people, killed his owner, uh, just killing people. And it just, the whole time, it's just these two people stuck in a car. And it's like, damn, this has got to be the worst father in the world, dude. It's like, where the hell are you, bro? But I guess they explained it, why he wasn't present, but I didn't buy it. I didn't buy it. It's like, come on, bro, you needed to be there. But I was really leery of dogs. And what makes it worse is dogs know when you're afraid. They know. And so it made it even worse and even more uncomfortable being around them. So in some ways, this movie terrified me far more than Jaws, because I wasn't afraid of a shark really getting to me, because I can't swim anyway. And I've been in a pool, but only enough where I can walk through it. If I have to swim, I won't go in. So the chances of a shark showing up were pretty much nil, because I've never been in an ocean. I've never even seen an ocean. So didn't have to worry about the shark thing, but I was certainly thinking it when I got in water. Dogs are everywhere. The building I live in, the people across from me have a dog. The people next to me, there's at least 3 or 4 apartments that have dogs just on my floor. I hear them all the time. One of my former neighbors that moved out, they had a dog. So you can't escape dogs. They're everywhere. So this, as a kid, really made me uncomfortable to be around dogs. And the only dog that I could be comfortable around, it took a little bit for me to get comfortable, was my Uncle Kendall's old dog, Junkyard. That was the only dog that I felt somewhat comfortable around. But even then, I was a little leery to walk up on him because I was afraid he would do something. But Cujo, absolutely terrifying movie. I'm actually shocked they haven't done a remake of this, but maybe they will in light of what it did. So maybe down the line we'll see a remake of this movie. I'm not sure PETA would be a fan of it, but I think PETA would have a huge problem with a killer dog. But come on, PETA, just lighten up. It's a friggin' movie. No dogs were really gonna get killed. So anyway, number 9, Stephen King's Cujo. Oh boy, number 8. Number 8 is one of those movies that I would have never watched had it not been for school. School forced us to read this book. School forced us to watch the adjoining movie. And I ended up thoroughly enjoying the movie. I own the movie. And the star power that's in this movie, even though obviously at the time you didn't realize the star power that was in the movie, is absolutely amazing. The people that came from this movie and became just somebody. This movie, I mean, just for the people at watching this on YouTube, you already see who is in it. For those of you listening in, this movie, I'm just going to name these people. And when I say them, you're going to wonder, all these people were in one movie? Yep, all these people were in one movie. C. Thomas Howell, Matt Dillon, Ralph Macchio, Patrick Swayze, Emilio Estevez, Rob Lowe, Tom Cruise, Diane Lane, The Outsiders. I mean, that's a lot of star power in there. A very young Tom Cruise, Patrick Swayze before he was doing his dirty dancing, Ralph Macchio before he was mastering the crane kick. I mean, just Emilio Estevez before he made anybody famous. Rob Lowe before he was stealing the hearts of America. I mean, just Matt Dillon, C. Thomas. I mean, just the star power in this movie is astronomical. And I didn't expect to like this movie as much as I did, but I enjoyed reading the book. I was reading it and I was like, this is actually good. It's actually good. And they only forced us to read a little bit of the book in class. We watched the whole movie, and the movie was so good, I read the rest of the book. One of those few books I actually read, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Now it's a period piece. Obviously, it takes place, in greaser type of times where you have this rivalry between these two gangs, poor greasers and the rich Soaks. Sorry, I always say that name wrong. And a lot of things happen between these groups, and man, there are some things that happen in this movie that I'm like, that are so damn sad. But I was able to understand, of course, the perspective more of the greasers than I was the Sos. So I just could understand them because I always have been somewhat of a reject, a degenerate. That's who I am. And by the way, I'm proud of it. So I could relate far, far more to them than I could a bunch of society rich kids. Because I ain't rich, never have been, never will be. So this was just, like I said, this was just such a great movie. And Stay Gold. I mean, just I remember when I was a kid, I started saying it, Stay Gold. I would say that to a lot of people. And I always felt that the cool people knew what I meant, what I was saying, where I got it. And they would say it right back, Stay Gold. And I could always tell okay, this person has either read The Outsiders or they watched it, even to this day. And I think there was a TV show made of this, didn't last long. And I've always kind of heard some sprinklings here and there, not constant, of a remake to this movie. I don't think I'd watch a remake, but I'm just saying that. I just don't think I could watch a remake. I think this original was so classic, so good, that there's just not a reason to make a remake. There's no reason for a remake to exist. There's nothing wrong with the one that we have. So The Outsiders, Star Power, and that's why it's number 8. Number 7. it, I, I suppose people shouldn't be shocked that this character would show up again on a countdown list. This is one of those characters that has been mentioned a lot. And not only has this character been mentioned a lot, but this character was already mentioned down in the honorable mentions. This is one of the all-time greatest characters in cinematic history. And that's no bull. That's no bull at all. Those of you on YouTube, you can already see what the movie is. Somewhat an interesting title, of course. For those of you listening in, this is a James Bond movie. And since it's the 80s, you know who's James Bond. It is Roger Moore. So now it's a question of which one is it? This was directed by John Glenn. Stars, of course, Roger Moore, Maud Adams, Louis Jordan, Octopussy. And even as I just said it, I was thinking of the way Louis Jordan says it. The way Louis Jordan says Octopussy is just, he goes, Octopussy, Octopussy. It's the way he says it with his accent. It's like, damn, this is a dirty word, but he just made that sound fly. Octopussy. Anyway, James Bond comes back, and the whole thing is about this fake Fabergé egg that a dead agent was holding in his last moments, and that's how the movie starts. And Bond goes, and of course he uncovers this jewelry smuggling operation, and of course, being the 80s, the Russians are involved. I mean, that's just the way it was back then. Thankfully, we've gotten away from this, where it's no longer the Russians. Unfortunately, people have now replaced that with Middle East, and I wish they'd stop doing that too. But of course, you always have to have a bad guy, bad gal, whatever. I mean, there's always these tropes, no matter what. But Roger Moore, I've said it, he's not my favorite Bond. As a matter of fact, he's the one I can't stand. A lot of his, I don't like a lot the way he portrayed Bond in a lot of ways. But that didn't mean I didn't like some of his Bond movies. I did like some of his Bond movies, as proof by this being on the countdown. I liked Octopussy. Now, he was a bit long in the tooth at this point, which for those of you who don't understand that saying, it means he was old as fuck. But with Maud Adams, it didn't seem so weird as it would in View to a Kill. That was just not right. In which he'd be paired with the late Tanya Roberts. That, I mean, Tanya, I think, said that Roger was about the same age as her mom at that point. Come on, that was a bit much, too old to be James Bond. But Octopussy is an entertaining movie, and I love Maud Adams' character in this as Octopussy. She plays this mysterious leader of this group of women. So women should love this movie also, because these are strong women who don't need a man necessarily. They do everything on their own. They have their own little island that they run by themselves, where there are no men except for those invited by Octopussy. I just like saying the name Octopussy. Come on, folks. You know you do too. Had Roger Moore quit playing Bond right here, it would have been a great send-off. This was the proper time to stop, but he didn't. Came back, and of course would play Bond again. And his last hurrah was View to a Kill, and he just shouldn't have done that one. But this one, this is one of those good. This is one of the Bond movies I do think of when I think of Roger Moore. It was his last really great one, and he really should have closed it out right here. This should have been it. But he came back, did another Bond movie, and I'm sure he regretted it. I've heard some interviews where he was like, yeah, I shouldn't have probably done that one. But his place in history is secure as far as James Bond, even though he's not my favorite. But he did have Bond movies I liked, and this was one of them. As much as I'm ripping him, trust me, I really do like Octopussy. I have absolutely no problems watching this movie, and as well as a couple of other Roger Moore Bond movies. This is probably, I'd have to think about it, but this one may be my second or third favorite Roger Moore Bond movie. So it's not like he did nothing bad or nothing good as far as Bond. This is one of the good ones. So if you're a Bond fan, you already know about Octopussy. For those of you curious about Bond movies, I would recommend watching Octopussy. There's a couple of other Roger Moore Bond movies I'd recommend maybe before this to watch, but this is still a good one. So, number 7, Octopussy. Number 6. Number 6 is an odd choice. Not a movie I expected to like, and I recently went back and rewatched this, curious if I would still like it. And I still do. I still think it's a good movie. And it was made in an era where this actor was actually doing decent. And unfortunately, as far as with him, to me, movie career has not been very kind, because there hasn't been a whole lot. He's done good, and he was in one of the worst movies ever, a movie that has been mentioned on this show, sadly, by Eric, and that movie is Godzilla. So you probably now know the actor that I'm referring to, and you may now even know the movie. For those of you on YouTube, you're seeing it. For those of you listening in, this movie was directed by John Badham, and of course is starring Matthew Broderick, Ali Sheedy, John Wood, Dabney Coleman. War Games. War Games, again, this is definitely a product of its time. Again, the whole thing is with Russia. This was a huge trope in the 80s. And for those nowadays, for those of you who are younger, who may be listening to this, who don't even hear Russia except for illegal Facebook stuff during the Trump thing, which was about, that's about all you know about. That's about it. Back then, we were in this quiet war, the Cold War. And every day you kind of were curious, will the Russians bomb us? When will they do it? If you thought there was going to be a war, that America was going to be facing somebody, you thought it was going to be the Russians. And in every movie, the Russians were just always constantly being bad guys. And it was just a shame. I didn't like that they were always troped as the bad guy. And it was in everything. It was in movies, it was in TV, wrestling. I mean, just everything. The Russians were just the ultimate bad guy or gal. And in this movie, Matthew Broderick stars as this computer geek. I mean, just the technology in the movie. You have floppy disks. I mean, just arcades. I know some of you are, even though arcades are kind of have been making a comeback. This is the era of the arcade. And he's just this computer genius, and he stumbles onto some stuff that he shouldn't have, and nearly starts a war. Or maybe he does start a war. You'll have to watch to find out. But he's just this shy computer kid. And Ali Sheedy's this popular girl in school, and Matthew kind of takes a liking to her, and she kind of takes a liking to him. And Matthew's character in this is he's such a dork. He's such a nerd, but I'm a nerd, so I could totally identify him with him. Now, at that time, I'd never even touched a computer at this point, of course, because I'm only like 4 or 5 years old. So of course, no computers are going to get into my hands. But I could still relate to him because I knew I was a geek. I knew I was a geek, and I could tell that this guy was a geek. He just was a different type of geek, a computer geek, where I was already into superheroes and I was already somewhat noticing things like that through cartoons, of course, um, and a little bit eventually would get into the comics, of course. But war games, you know, some people point to Matthew Broderick's best movie being Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And I certainly understand why people would say that. I like war games a little more. I like war games just a little bit more than Ferris Bueller. And I love Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That is a movie that has been mentioned on this countdown show. So, but war games, there's just something different about war games. I remember back then, it felt so real. It felt real. And I remember thinking, is there a kid out there who's doing this? Basically, pre-hackers. That's what this is basically, in a way. Hackers. Just a very early version of it on a grander scale. Because we're talking about World War. And of course, this introduced me to the famous, you could see it over here, Death Con. And of course, some of you are wondering what that thing is. That is a product of the 80s. It is, I mentioned it already, floppy disks. I know none of you remember what floppy disks are, but they literally flopped in the wind, if that's why they were called floppy disks. But I love this movie, War Games. And it was one of those movies of the 80s that I thought of when I was thinking of movies that could be named. This is one of the ones I named, and when it popped up in this year, it was going to get on the countdown because I love this one so much. It is my favorite Matthew Broderick movie. Back when Matthew Broderick, to me, was still doing good movies, and he's unfortunately kind of left that era behind. And I'm trying to think of the last good movie he did. To me, I can't think of one. I'm sorry. I'm sure he's done something, but I just can't think of one. But his place is secure here. Number 6, War Games. All right, top 5. We're in the top 5. And we're going to start in the world of comedy again. We're getting a comedy. We've had some comedy with Superman, no comedy with Cujo. There's a couple of comedic elements in The Outsiders. Of course, with Roger Moore, you got a little bit of comedy in Octopussy, a little bit of comedy in War Games, but this is pure comedy. This starred some comic geniuses and legends who at the time, my goodness, it just seemed like they couldn't do any wrong. One in particular who would just fall and fall hard. Don't know what happened to the brother. But this movie, I'm looking at the poster for it and it cracks me up. And it has characters that would pop up in another movie starring one of these individuals, even though he was playing a completely different human being. For those of you on YouTube, you're already seeing the movie. For those of you listening in, this movie was directed by John Landis, a name that's been mentioned before, and stars Eddie Murphy, Dan Aykroyd, Ralph Bellamy, Jamie Lee Curtis. It is Trading Places. Trading Places is such an interesting movie. Dan Aykroyd plays this snobbish, just elitist, rich guy. And Eddie Murphy is a broke, just stereotypical brother in a movie of the 80s. and two very, very rich guys, which would be trying to point at them. I can't point at him. Well, there we go. This guy right here, and these two. These two make a bet for $1 about switching their lives. And Eddie goes from this broke dude in jail to this rich guy with a butler. And Dan Aykroyd goes from this elitist snob at his friends at a country club, being turned down by them, booted, losing his job, being called a heroin dealer, I think a drug dealer, and staying with a hooker. But let's be honest, real life hookers and movie hookers are not the same. This hooker was Jamie Lee Curtis, and if hookers looked like that, I don't mind saying, I'd be buying some hookers. Of course, Jamie Lee Curtis. This was, you would see a couple of things in this movie of Jamie Lee, but this is just a hysterical movie. This is one of those movies I don't own it, but it's one of those that's on that Amazon list that's got like 1,000 DVDs and Blu-rays on it. It's in there. It's on there. And someday I will eventually get this. I have to do it. It's just so damn funny. And I said two people would show up in another person's movie. Eddie would go on to do, of course, Coming to America. And he gives some money to these two homeless people. And it's these two old rich guys that I pointed at before that I'm not even going to try to point at again. And they're like, Mortimer, we're back. And it's like, are they going to do a sequel to Trading Places? Which, of course, they never really did. It was just a stupid little joke on us, and just a nod to a previous movie, which was funny still in its own right. But this was so entertaining, and the comic genius of Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy these are legends in comedy, just absolute legends. The list of movies that these guys are involved in, TV shows that they're involved in. Dan Aykroyd, of course, a tremendous legendary writer with Harold Ramis with Ghostbusters. These are just two comic legends, and to have them paired up in this movie, which it could have been a flop, but this was just damn funny. Just rolling around the ground laughter. And sometimes you need a movie like that, especially in times like this. So Trading Places is just damn funny. It's hysterical. Dan Aykroyd acting like a black man with the paint. I know some people will have some problems with that, especially in today's climate. But folks, it's a movie. He's not being racist. Let it go. It's funny. It is funny. Sometimes I wish we could go back to this time when stuff like that could be done and where the term politically correct didn't exist. It just didn't exist. We've gotten way too politically correct. That scene would not happen today because too many black people would get pissed. And come on, it's just stupid comedy. Let it go. But Trading Places, number 5, all-time legendary comedic movie by two comedy geniuses, and of course starring the beautiful Jamie Lee Curtis, who to me, I don't care what anybody says, to me she's still beautiful, an ageless wonder as far as I'm concerned. All right, number 4. Well, you think I was going to leave comedy? This is another comedy. And this would spawn off a franchise as well, uh, a franchise with a certain family, and then a franchise just with, well, let's just say this would was this was just a huge movie. And unfortunately, it stars an actor whose career, this era of his career was the best era of his career, and he went down hard as well. Um, he had his own late night show, which, ugh, it was bad. Feel bad for the guy. He was trying, but he was not meant to have a late night show. But this movie was hysterical as well. For those of you on YouTube, you're seeing it. You're seeing it. There you go. So you know which one it is. For those listening in, this is National Lampoon's Vacation, our first movie with the Griswold family, which has got to be the dumbest one of the dumbest families in the world. I always joked around that I'm just imagining if the Griswolds lived next door to the Bundys. I would It would be the funniest show ever. But would the block be able to survive Al Bundy and Clark Griswold? I don't know, but man, it'd be interesting to watch. This was directed, of course, by Harold Ramis. I already said it, Harold Ramis's name. Another legend. Harold is another genius. Rest in peace to Harold Ramis. Written by John Hughes, of course. Stars Chevy Chase, Beverly D'Angelo, who back then, beautiful woman. And the Griswolds are on this family cross-country drive to get to Wally World. That's the whole point of the movie. They're just driving to get to Wally World. And a lot of things happen with girls in Ferraris and dogs and elderly people and just police. Just so much stuff happens in this movie. And it is fall down funny. It is just a classic. And of course, it's one of those times where you can argue a sequel could actually be funnier, because National Lampoon's European Vacation is even more funny. That movie is just, these two movies together are great. Now, I know a lot of you have a special feeling toward to the Christmas movie. And I don't mind the Christmas movie. But when compared to these previous two, for me, it's the worst of those three. And then the Vegas Vacation happened, and that really became the worst. And then, of course, a few years ago, there was a remake, which I never saw, and I never will. I don't want anything to do with that thing. But man, National Lampoon's Vacation. This You hoped that nobody ever had to endure a vacation like this, because one, there's no human being that could possibly be this dumb. Nobody could possibly be this dumb as Clark was. But he was so funny. I mean, the whole thing with the sandwich, dancing and eating the sandwich to Kirsty Brinkley. Again, another beautiful woman. I mean, this National Lampoon's Vacation, fall down funny. Uh, Definitely recommend watching this. Definitely recommend watching European Vacation. Those are the classics to me. And I don't have a problem with Christmas. I just think of these first three, it is the worst. I think the previous two were funnier than Christmas Vacation. That's just my humble opinion. But so many John Candy was in this, late great John Candy. Just this is just an era of great comedy movies, the 80s. And comedies have changed, and we got into this era of spoofs which went way too far. I mean, spoofs had their place in the 80s, of course. We had we had Airplane, Naked Gun, but spoofs went into this whole other territory. And now we're in these just stupid comedy, just stupid. So, missed this era of comedy movies. This was a good era for comedies, was the 80s. And it would go into the 90s, but you would also start to see the demise in the late 90s. And as we got into 2000, comedies really were starting to go on the downhill. And that leads us to where we are now, where the comedies are just not funny. They're just not funny. It's a shame. But this one was one of the great comedies of all time, starring, like I said, Chevy Chase as Clark W. Griswold. It is, of course, on my list, number 4, National Lampoon's Vacation. Number 3, another comedy. Now, a lot of people have a certain affinity for National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, but there's a few other Christmas movies I hold a lot higher than that. Home Alone, I hold higher. Some of you may not think this is a Christmas movie, but it is. Die Hard is a Christmas movie. And this movie is also a Christmas movie. In fact, it's got Christmas in the title. For those of you watching on YouTube, you can already see what it is. This is A Christmas Story. A Christmas Story directed by Bob Clark, starring Peter Billingsley, Melinda Dillon, Darren McGavin. This takes place in the 40s, and it's about a young boy named Ralphie. And Ralphie, he just wants that Red Ryder BB gun. That's all he wants. And a lot of things happen on the way to Christmas. And of course the line that, he keeps getting said every time he wants this gun is, "You'll shoot your eye out." So, this movie is so hysterical. I mean, I think it's TBS that does this, or it could be TNT. It's one of those 24 hours of A Christmas Story where they just air this thing back to back to back for 24 straight hours. Now, I don't have cable anymore, but when I did, I would watch a good portion I would watch this maybe anywhere from 8 to 10 to 12 hours. Just would watch it in a loop. One time I decided, you know what? I'm going to just watch this for the whole day. And I did. And I was still able to laugh every single time. This movie does not get old. It just doesn't. I do proudly own this movie, so I don't have to do that anymore. I don't have to watch it in a loop. I can just watch my movie. I believe I have it on Blu-ray. But this is so funny. It's just so damn funny. And they hired the right actors. That bunny scene is just pure torture, because we've all, as kids, gotten that gift that it's something you have to wear, and somebody wants you to wear it now, and you would rather die than put that thing on. It could be a shirt, it could be a sweater, but you just don't want to wear it. And you put the thing on, and you just know. You just know. And you either have somebody there who's laughing at you, you have somebody there who's saying it looks great, and you have one person saying, "Would you get that off the boy? Get that thing off of him. He's not proud to be wearing that. Get that thing off of him." So, so many classic tropes, so many classic scenes in this movie. Tongue stuck to the pole, which is what you're, kind of seeing right there. The leg lamp, the dogs. I mean, there's just so much funny about this. Soap in the mouth. Oh, fuck. I mean, this movie is so damn funny. It is a Christmas classic. And when I think of Christmas movies, this, as far as live action, is the first movie I actually think of, is A Christmas Story. And it's one of those few movies. I'm not big on Christmas, but when it gets to Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, this is one of those things I do watch yearly. And I only watch it during the Christmas time. There's a few times I've watched it outside the season, but mainly I keep it in its place, which is around the silly season. And it's never lost its humor to me. This movie is just as funny now as it was when I first watched it. And it's just never gotten overdone for me. I love it. It's a classic. And so it definitely earned its place high on this list at number 3, A Christmas Story. Number 2, the runner-up, the one that just barely couldn't quite make it at number 1. I know some people that might be upset with me for this. But obviously on this show, I have never strayed away from controversy. So instead of hitting around it, let's just get right to it. Yeah. I know some of you are going to have a problem with me on this. And I completely get it. On YouTube, y'all are seeing it. And for those listening in, it's Star Wars, Return of the Jedi, Episode 6. Yeah. It does hurt putting this at number 2. Because I'm not saying Return of the Jedi is bad. I am saying that of the original trilogy, Empire is the best, hands down. Something has to be the worst. It's not an insult. Something has to be the worst. And it's this one. It is the worst, to me, of the original trilogy. It's not a rip. When I say that Lord of the Rings is the greatest trilogy ever made, it's because each movie got better. I can't say that about the original Star Wars trilogy. It started off real like it was headed that direction. Star Wars, and then you get to Empire, and then you get down here with Return. And I like Return. It's not like it's unwatchable. It's totally watchable. It's a damn good movie. But something has to be the worst. And unfortunately, it was Return of the Jedi. And of course, this starts out with the question that for me was haunting me at this point was, get Han back. Because Empire ends with a cliffhanger, and the Rebel Alliance is in just the shits at the end of Empire Strikes Back. And all I was thinking about when this movie started was Han. I want Han back. I want Han back. And of course, there was another little question that was in my head, wondering, is it true? Is it not true? But I wanted Han back. Han's my favorite character, so I wanted Han back. And there's so many great scenes in here. The continuing growth of course, Luke Skywalker as a Jedi. There's some sad moments in this movie, of course. Now, spoiler alert. I'm just throwing it out there. I've tried to avoid saying any spoilers, but if you haven't watched Return of the Jedi, I'm about to say a couple of things that are spoiler territory. And if you don't want to know because you haven't gotten to Return for some reason, or you haven't watched Empire, or you have, if there's certain things you haven't quite watched in Star Wars and you don't want it blown, spoiler alert. Okay? You've been warned. In Empire, of course, Vader says to Luke, that I am your father. And you're left wondering, is that true? You get the resolution in this movie, if that's true. Han was frozen in carbonite in The Empire Strikes Back after being betrayed by Lando Calrissian, his old friend. You get your resolution as far as getting Han back. And you learn just how powerful the Skywalker family is, because Luke's not alone. He has a sister. And that point, you think back to a few things and you're like, oh, God, that's a little creepy now. I didn't know if they always knew they were going there, but if they did, why did they do that? And of course, one of the big moments in my young life was Carrie Fisher in that slave girl outfit. Yeah, that was a major moment in my young life. I just, that was my first crush. Was right there. I've said it before that she was that first early crush, along with another actress who was closer to my age at the time. Carrie, though, was the first full-grown woman who I had somewhat of a little bit of a crush on back then. She was a sex symbol back then. Come on. That slave girl outfit, just not right. Just not right. Just things a little 4 or 5-year-old boy was, wondering about. I don't need to go into this, but Return of the Jedi, it's a great movie. Unfortunately, this would also introduce those fucking Ewoks. Even as a kid, I hated the Ewoks. I didn't like them then. I don't like them now. So that was a negative point of the original series of movies, was those damn Ewoks. But of course, these movies will get re-released numerous times, and they've edited it now where certain actors that were in it before are not in it, replaced with other actors. There's a whole lot of things with these movies, but Return of the Jedi, such a classic. The classic lightsaber duel again at the end. You had to see the rematch between Luke and Vader. You get that here. Just a great movie. An awesome movie. Love Return of the Jedi. And it does hurt me putting it at number 2, but I gotta be real, and it's really number 2. So may the Force be with you, and please forgive me. Number 2 is Return of the Jedi. Oh boy, number 1. One left. Some of you probably already know what it is, which may make you understand. For those of you, you know why this is number 1. But before I say number 1, let's do just a little review. Number 10 was Superman 3. Number 9 was Cujo. Number 8 was The Outsiders. 7, Octopussy. Octopussy. Number 6, War Games. 5, Trading Places. 4, National Lampoon's Vacation. 3, A Christmas Story. And runner-up, number 2, Return of the Jedi. Number 1. There was only one movie that was going to be number 1 for this year. Return of the Jedi was never going to be number 1. It could have been had one movie just not been made that year. And there's no reason to even delay this. Yep. Scarface. Al Pacino playing Tony Montana. This movie was so big for me that it was my favorite movie of all time until Joker. It was my favorite movie all the way up to Joker. I mean, that's a long time that it remained my favorite movie of all time. Over 20 years, it was on top of the mountain for me until Joker beat it. Scarface, this is so over the top. Takes place, of course, 1980s, and a lot of people were leaving Cuba. A lot of them were leaving illegally, and Tony Montana's one of them. And he's just determined to make it, which you gotta respect. He chooses a different type of business. He's a criminal, and he's just determined to make it on top and he eventually he does. He makes it on top. He makes it in this business, and he hooks up with a very young Michelle Pfeiffer, Michelle Pfeiffer to me is one of the sexiest women ever, but not back then. Back then, she was a little bit stick figure for me, and I always found it a little creepy. She improved on that as the years went on and didn't look so stickly as she was in that. But Scarface, I could talk about this movie for hours. There's a phrase in this movie that has become one of my mantras. All I have in this world is my balls and my word, and I don't break them for nobody. That's how I feel. If I give you my word, I mean it. I will not break it. And, things like, don't get high on your own supply. When you get a money, you get a power. When you get a power, then you get a woman. And of course, that's the line that everybody says and thinks of and has been said in bedrooms all across the world. Say hello to my little friend. Scarface is one of those characters you should not be rooting for him. You know he's a bad guy. He's doing bad things. He even says it, I'm the bad guy. But you can't help it. He just is a likable character. You don't like everything he does, and you root for him. You root for him despite everything he does. Now, again, spoiler alert, but Manny, his boy, his partner, what he does to Manny is when you knew. When I watched what he did to Manny, I was like, you're not going to end it. This is not going to end good for you. I thought it could stupidly, but now I know it can't. You cannot do what you just did and get away with it. You've gone too far. You went too far before this. But I still stupidly thought somehow you could survive, but not this. And his sister is, of course, played by Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio. We get to it. It's so, I want to describe the ending of this movie, but it's so revealing stuff. But this ends in a huge shootout at Tony's place, and a lot of bullets, a lot of blood, bodies. It is an amazing ending to a movie. The way this movie ends, it is just awesome. It is truly one of the greatest movies ever made. It is cinematic genius, and it's a long movie. I mean, there's no doubts on this. It is long, and some people have a problem with how long this is. I mean, this is 2 hours and 50 minutes long. It's not short, but that's what you get when you have the genius of Brian De Palma at work, the genius of writer Oliver Stone at work. you get a movie like this, starring, like I said, Al Pacino, Michelle Pfeiffer, Stephen Bauer, Mary Elizabeth Mastro-Tobio, Robert Loggia, oh God, what's his name? Oh geez, Harris Yolin, F. Murray Abraham. Just this is a legendary movie. I love this movie. I have a poster of this movie. Thank you, Rob. I'm looking at it right now. I kind of wish I'd have grabbed it and brought it over here. It's over there. I don't want to run off my own podcast to go grab it. So it's this animatronic statue of Tony Montana that you push the button and it talks. He says his lines unedited. Which there's another thing. There's an unedited version of this movie. It's funny. It is funny. The things they because there's a lot of cussing in this movie, a lot, and they have to edit words. The famous one is pineapple, and I'll let you guess what they had to replace with pineapple. It does start with P. I'll just let you guess. But I own this movie 3 times. I bought it on I have it on VHS. It got destroyed accidentally, pissed me off. Got it in on DVD. Got it on DVD again because it was a special edition version. And then I bought it on Blu-ray. So technically I own this movie 4 times, but presently I have it still 3 times because the VHS got destroyed, which pissed me off. I love this movie. I could go on about Scarface forever. Rob and I absolutely love this movie. It is one of our all-time favorites. Rob, in a way, introduced me to this movie, and I thank him for it. Great movie, legendary movie. Al Pacino playing Tony Montana as Scarface. The rap industry loves this movie. Tony Montana, whether people like it or not, has become a hero. And the idea that they would dare risk remaking this. Certain movies you just don't need to remake. This is one of them. You're not going to top it. You are not topping Al Pacino. You just can't. I don't care who you hire. You will not top this. Now, I know this is a remake from an older movie. I know it's a remake. I've seen the original one. I've seen it. And it's actually good. But this is Al Pacino. You're just not going to top this. So Hollywood, what the fuck? You don't need to remake everything. And this is a prime example. I'm so pissed off about that I was like, I'll never watch movies again. It's that offensive. But realistically, that probably won't happen. I wouldn't stop watching movies, but man, I would not watch it. That I can guarantee you. I don't care who would. I just don't want anything to do with it. Number 1, with a bullet, a lot of bullets, Al Pacino, Scarface. And that's the countdown. What did you think? What are your favorite movies from 1983? Please let me know. Do you have any show ideas? Let me know. Like I said, give me your idea of your countdown. Did I make any mistakes? Did I miss certain movies that you think should have been in the countdown? Again, let me know. In fact, I'm going to mention just a couple of others that were honorable mentions that I didn't mention previously. Sword in the Stone, Eddie Murphy Delirious, and Daffy Duck's Fantasy Island. I was a sucker for the Looney Tunes back then. So those movies were hysterical. But do you have any ideas? You want to listen to the archive? Plenty of ways you can do all these. One, you can, if you have any ideas or anything you want to communicate with the show, you can send an email to thecountdown2020@gmail.com. You can also go onto the Facebook page. Just search at the Countdown 2020 Podcast 1. You can also click on the link on there and you can listen to the show. Like I said, you can give me your ideas, other countdowns that you would like to do, your own opinion on countdowns, your own countdown list. You can also go on Twitter. Just search at the Countdown PO1. You can listen to the show over on Spotify. Just search the Countdown 2020 and listen to our entire archive, which I believe this episode is episode number 52. So I've gotten past the 50 threshold, halfway to the 100 mark. You can also go on to Instagram. Just search the Countdown 20. I'm also on Amazon Audible. Just search the Countdown Podcast. Of course, if you're watching, you already know that, but if you're not, I'm also on YouTube. Just search the Countdown Podcast with MJ Book. Those episodes are a little more interesting than the audio because I don't really edit the video. It is just the way it is. The only thing I edit is adding in the intro, adding in that music, adding in a little something at the end, but everything in the middle is left alone. So it's the show at its most raw. So if you want to watch that, that's how you definitely go over to the YouTube page. And of course, all are available through podbean.com. Just search the Countdown Podcast. And if you just want to head to the our Podbean website on there and listen to the archive right there, you can do that by going and searching the Countdown 2020.podbean.com. And you can listen to the full archive of all the episodes I've done and will continue to do for the foreseeable future. Like I said, all available through podbean.com. I do want to take the time to thank Kevin MacLeod and Incomtech.com for the use of the royalty-free music, Ice Flow, that you hear at the beginning and ends of the show when I don't have some special music that I use. And I do want to, I want to thank everybody who's listening in. I greatly, greatly appreciate you. I saw just a few days ago when I was looking that somebody in Spain had listened in. I appreciate everyone who listens into the show. Love doing the show and will continue to do it for the foreseeable future. Once again, if you're a professional wrestling fan, please listen to Third Generation Wrestling, hosted by the Real Big E, Eric, and the Ambassador Rob. I pop on. Also, good brother Blake pops on. Doc, we haven't forgotten you, brother. Please listen to them. Know everything about, just wrestling fans talking wrestling. And sometimes we voyage outside wrestling. I know he just recently posted our Mortal Kombat Annihilation movie review, the video for it. So hop onto the YouTube page and search Third Generation Wrestling for that. Definitely would love to hear our reviews on it. Some people liked it, some people didn't. Movie reviews, wrestling movie reviews, reviewing the pay-per-views, both of WWE, NXT, AEW, which, speaking of AEW, since he announced it on his show, I wasn't going to announce it on mine until he announced it on his. Now I can say it. The Third Generation Wrestling crew is going to be headed to an AEW pay-per-view. That's right. All Out will be in Chicago. And me, Eric, and Rob will be in attendance to watch AEW, watching a wrestling show with crowds. And it's going to be our first AEW show. And it's a pay-per-view. And AEW has had some rather interesting news and still rumored news. So this pay-per-view could be just absolutely awesome. I cannot wait to watch this pay-per-view. It is going to be fun. And we're of course going to end up doing a post-show probably right after we leave there. So definitely listen to Third Generation Wrestling for that. And that's all I got for you. So again, thank you all for listening in. I appreciate you all greatly. Love my listeners, love my viewers. and I will catch you all again on the next episode of, you know what, the countdown. Have yourself a great day or evening, whatever time it is. Bye-bye.